Coming up on Omnivore, more climate pressures on the food supply chain, ingredient trends from IFT FIRST, and upcycling opportunities from food waste. It's all ahead on episode 44 of Omnivore, from the editors of Food Technology Magazine and the Institute of Food Technologists.
This episode of Omnivore is brought to you by CalSec. Visit calsec.com to uncover new ways to create clean products that look better, taste better, and last longer, naturally, with CalSec.
Welcome to Omnivore from IFT and Food Technology, where we explore the intersection of business, science, and technology in the global food system. I'm Bill McDowell. Climate change is already affecting the consistent availability of some food ingredients, and manufacturers and ingredient suppliers are scrambling to mitigate the pressure. At the recent IFT FIRST annual Event and Expo in July, a panel of experts discussed strategies to build resiliency up and down the supply chain. Here's an excerpt from that panel discussion, moderated by Food Technology's Kelly Hensel and featuring Kenzie Bear, Conagra's Senior Sustainability Specialist, Kimberly Morgan, Extension Economist and Associate Professor in the Department of Food and Resource Economics at the University of Florida, Kamesh Ellajosyula, Chief Innovation and Quality Officer at Olam Food Ingredients, and Jaime Reeves, Executive Vice President of Product Development and Commercialization at Mattson.
Obviously, in order to discuss the issue of ingredient sourcing in a changing climate, we kind of have to know where we're at today. So I was hoping, Kenzie, you could start us off by talking about the complexity of supply chains and the importance of data.
So when we want to talk about supply chain complexity, it is a pivotal aspect. The biggest part of that aspect, though, is data management. When we talk about data management, we're talking about our supplier locations, some country of origin information, and other areas of sourcing and responsible sourcing practices. This plays into roles when such climate events occur, such as waterways drying up and ships can't transport, or when the Baltimore Bridge collapse happened. Those things, we have to be able to source back our ingredients in order to understand how our business is going to be impacted and where we can't provide safe and affordable food anymore. So when we talk about data management, we're talking about information regarding the ingredient sourcing as well as manufacturing sourcing to ensure there's minimal supply chain disruptions.
Another aspect of where you're getting started is to know what the threats are that may impact you tomorrow. I know, Kim, we were talking a little bit about diseases, because you work more. Can you explain a little bit about what you do?
So as an economist, my job is to look at the 5 risks that any agribusiness is going to face. When you're speaking with climate change, you're talking about production issues. So how does the grower pivot in the face of reduced water, too much water, a complete wipeout of the crop? What are the risk management strategies that the grower has available to them? So that's where we spend a lot of time working with growers. So to me, a lot of future proofing is really understanding what's happening at the grower level and the locations where you source your ingredients.
And I know, Kamesh, you have some thoughts on that too.
Of our food supply chain is built on some of the poorest farmers of the world, right? So when you look at cocoa, coffee, many of our ingredients that we work with, this is subsistence farming. So you can't expect them to be funding, and preventing the adverse effects of climate change, Like Kimberly is saying, the folks that work on extension, work on the plant science, plant pathology, crop science, etc., they're massively important to help these small farmers build resilience. And how can you get to them? You can only get to them if you have a robust process, you have a way in with your procurement sustainability folks accessing supply chains where good is happening, and that's how you can access it. And so you have to build the right partnerships, work with companies that invest and you can piggyback on them, even invest with them, and make sure the supply chain is much more sustainable.
I'd love to talk a little bit more about partnerships and how they can help shore up supply chains and or expand your sustainability efforts.
Conagra is vertically integrated in 7 different other crops, more specifically catered towards our Bird's Eye brand. So corn, carrots, peas, all the great vegetables that you need. So again, we don't use everything we produce because production efficiencies are fantastic nowadays. So we're constantly looking for other agricultural and company partnerships to help grow and optimize the products we're using. Something in the world of sustainability we're constantly talking about is food waste, and the number one area of food waste is in the field. We're on a massive glide path to make sure that doesn't continue. We're on a continuous glide path to ensure that food waste in the farms or in the fields doesn't exist, and we're truly using everything that resources are needed to produce. So we're constantly building those partnerships and really with other companies and other farmers to help build that supply chain resiliency.
I want to say that, while obviously you can prepare and you can look at dual sourcing and co-sourcing, and they go a long way to kind of meeting that supply chain disturbances, it's going to get even more difficult as climate change, becomes even more apparent. So I was hoping you guys could talk to us about how your clients or how your customers are using reformulation and upcycling as solutions. And I know, Jaime, you have a lot to say on this one.
So one of our clients was 2 guys. They got together during the pandemic to drink coffee. They were outside with their little cups, and they said, "Oh my gosh, have you read the studies on global warming? Our coffee's going to go away. There's no way this can happen." So they came to us and said, "How do we prevent losing our wonderful coffee in the morning?" So we did some research and found that if you roasted date seeds and added caffeine and other ingredients, you actually can mimic the taste of coffee without having the coffee bean. So we helped them develop their ready-to-drink coffee. So it's a Tomo Coffee is what the company that's called. And so they are now selling coffee that you can brew at home. So it's just an awesome example of really using upcycled ingredients in a unique way to deliver experiences that people are used to.
I know, Kamesh, you talked a little bit about Cascara. Is there anything else you wanted to share on that, like what you guys are doing with it?
A significant amount of coffee fruit. Most of us are aware of spent coffee waste. That's the bean, but the coffee fruit itself is largely rotting away all around the world. So if you could potentially leverage it and use it, there's absolutely phenomenal amount of impact right from greenhouse gases and improving farmer income, etc. So we are working on how could we source that, how could we process it, make it into convenient drinks, etc. So that's one piece of work that we're doing. There's a lot of waste out there which has valuable fiber, protein, all kinds of nutrients that are going to waste, not to talk about bioactives. So I would urge you to find ways in which you could contribute, because turning this ag waste into wealth is a huge opportunity.
What do you guys see as the biggest or most exciting opportunity for companies, food manufacturers or ingredient companies, in the next decade?
I think in the last 100 years, we've optimized production efficiencies on the farms. We're able to produce a lot more with a lot less. And now it's time to increase those nutritional densities of those products and really give the consumer something with sustenance. But another thing too is having great food scientists a part of that team and a part of that future. So this is a really great opportunity to be in the world of food science and our perspective.
Okay, I'll probably close with my thinking on 3 things, right? First is you'll need a lot of human intelligence to navigate what's happening right now. So make sure you're understanding what is the state of your current supply chain, apply the good test we talked about. And if you know that, some of your probably product developers, you will be able to reformulate, not do a fire drill at the end when you're suddenly out of a particular ingredient, it's not available from a particular origin, etc. You'd be prepared for it, right? The second thing is empathy. Our supply chain is extremely complex, and some of the poorest people in the world are producing our food. Having empathy for that and building empathy into our sourcing models is going to be super important. And the last thing is technology, including AI. And there's plenty of technology to be leveraged. And technology, isn't all Microsoft, NVIDIA, Google. It can also be things like intercropping. If you intercrop cocoa and banana, you can use the banana leaves to ferment the cocoa. You can prevent pest and disease. You can reduce pest disease burden for the farmer. They get income throughout the year because bananas come at a different time, cocoa is harvested at a different time. So there's a lot of technology that's available, a lot of knowledge that's available that has to be leveraged. A combination of the three, I think, will future-proof our ingredient supply chains.
This IFT First excerpt featured Kenzie Bear, Kimberly Morgan, Kamesh Ellajosyula, Jaime Reeves, and Kelly Hensel. You can check out Food Technology's September issue for more insights on future-proofing supply chains against climate change. We'll be back with more Omnivore in a moment, but first, this word from our sponsor.
Ready to discover what's naturally possible? Food and beverage brands are uncovering new ways to create clean products that look better, taste better, and last longer, naturally, with Calsec. Since 1958, Calsec's food scientists have been helping brands transform their products with technology for natural color, elevated flavors, and safer extended shelf lives. As dedicated partners, Calsec is there to guide you the whole way. Visit their website at calsec.com to connect with the Calsec team and find your path to natural products your customers will love and trust.
Welcome back to Omnivore. I'm Bill McDowell. Food Technology's editors scoured a bustling expo floor at the 2024 IFT First Annual Event and Expo this summer, seeking out the top food ingredient trends and innovations on display. Science and Technology editor Julie Larson Bricher and associate editor Emily Little sat down to recap the top trends they saw on the show floor.
Julie, we are back. This is now our third year covering the expo floor together. What were your overall impressions this year?
Well, it was a really dynamic expo show floor this year. It was wildly busy. Every time I was out on the floor, you found something new at every booth. And it didn't matter if it was colors or flavors, health benefits, whatever people were showcasing were things that were so on trend. It was obvious what the trends were.
I would say after maybe day one, I already had an idea in my head of what this story was going to be. It was just so apparent.
Yeah. And, we had the traditional favorites, like you got to go to Blomer's and get your ice cream, and you have to go to Ingredion. They always have, I think, the best beverages. They always make really delicious beverages. But yeah, we all have our favorites. The craft booth was wonderful this year with its all the displays and the giveaways. And we had the KSM 66 ashwagandha booth. They had beautiful bags. Did you see them everywhere? They were just fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah. But also just their products, learning about the products. I just thought there was a lot of exciting advances this year.
Yeah. And one of the advances that we called out in this story was what we called for the health of it. Basically, foods with health promoting functions, things that not only nourish you, but will help you feel better. Can you talk a bit about some of those things that you saw?
Yeah, and as an older person, I find that I'm looking for these kind of more value add foods, right? They give me brain health, that help my heart function better, that help my digestion or my circulation, right? And I really found that the ingredient manufacturers on the floor specifically were all about that sort of food is medicine, better for you 2.0 attitude. And there's a lot. And like I just mentioned, KSM 66 ashwagandha, usually that's been put into sports capsules, like dietary supplements to help athletes, physically recover after they've had, serious activity. But Brian Kehoe, who I talked to there, was really talking about the traditional use of ashwagandha, which is to affect your stress, lower your stress, give you a more calm mood. And so we did find there were a lot of items out there that were about brain health. I mean, that was a big one. They had, there was another company called PLT Health Solutions. It was, they called it, I think, next gen support for brain and body. And they had this mango tango RTD beverage that was delicious. And, but again, tied to your cognitive function as well as improving physical performance. So again, with that sort of sports connection, Virginia Dare was another one. They were focused on the cognitive benefits. Also, they had I think it was called the Speculoos Cookie Cognitive Cold Brew Latte.
I had that sample. It was delicious.
Yes, it really was. And they were saying also cognitive enhancer, right? It has choline in it. So that was very interesting. So the brain health I found was a really sort of a big subtrend for the health of it. There was also, I think it's Kiowa. They had this postbiotic that is a patented strain of Lactococcus lactis, and which shows in clinical research that it supports your immunity. So it's a immune booster, and that is very important right now, especially if you're elderly or you have some sort of immunosuppression, condition. So I thought that was very food as medicine.
Yeah, I think people are just looking to get more bang for their buck when it comes to what they're eating. If I'm having some cold brew that tastes like cookie butter, why can't it help my brain health? Why can't it have immunity properties?
Exactly. And I mean, you also notice that it is about perception too. Like right now, we have all these different regulations and bans on food additive colors, and I noticed that a lot. I think that there was a lot going on with the color.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. The one that seems to be the biggest and looming over every company's head right now is the California Food Safety Act, which is going to target red dye number 3 and red dye number 40. That will go into effect in 2027. So I think companies now are starting to realize we need to get our substitute for when this comes into effect. So I went over and saw Stephen Loro with Color Maker, and he was talking about how they're already developing that substitute right now so that when it comes into effect, it's ready. And they're doing all kinds of testing to make sure that their color can stand up to any process, whether it's heat, moisture, you don't lose that bright red color. Same thing over at Givaudan. If you saw their booth, everything was in their amaze red color, down to their shirts and their carpet and all of their samples. It was very on theme. But with both of these, they're natural colors, which I think also hits on another big topic. We want these colors to be bright and vibrant, but we want them to be safe and natural. So I think that's really hitting what consumers are wanting this year. And then we had the complete opposite end of the spectrum, which I just thought was so interesting when I talked to MicroDried. They're a fruit and vegetable supplier, mostly dried fruits. And Greg Anjanando was telling me about their process and how it maintains the color of the fruit. So you don't have to add the color back in. And that was their way of getting around this regulation is if we can, let's take a strawberry, for example, if we can process that strawberry so it keeps that really vibrant color and we don't have to add something in, then we're not nearly as worried about this law. So I think there's going to be a lot of creative solutions specifically with color.
Yeah, I was going to say, I stopped by the CalSec booth and they were telling me that 90% of shoppers that are making purchasing decisions, it's based completely on visual appeal. And so that transition from synthetic to natural colors is paramount because you get better label appeal, right? Mm-hmm. And they were showing this whole portfolio that included, of course, the reds, right? They were sourced from like anthocyanins, I believe, and then they had also the vibrant yellow hues. That's another color that has come under some scrutiny for bans over the years. And they're using like turmeric and annatto and carrot, it's very natural. And then, of course, blue spirulina, right?
I always love seeing the color booths. They have the most fun displays, obviously, when you're doing colors. But they're also just really cool ways to showcase it. GNT had a rainbow snack bar, which was really fun. So you could pick your own snacks in different colors. I think a lot of people had fun with that.
Yeah, I like that one too. Well, and I was going to say the other really big trend. I mean, we highlighted 5 in our review, but we really got to talk about the solving for zero, right? We have to talk about sugar reduction, salt reduction. I would say almost every other booth that I visited, this was one of the strongest better for you trends out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cargill did a great job. They had a new product that basically I think it's called Eversweet. So it was like Eversweet plus this other proprietary ingredient called Clearflow. And so they called that the game changer when it comes to sugar reduction. So it was a stevia sweetener and this natural flavor. They were showcasing it in this hydration beverage and protein smoothie, and they were delicious. And it really kind of helped product developers, understand how they could do a beverage formulation and kind of remove that bitterness from the beverage that is associated with caffeine, and then but get that nice and mask like the plant protein taste, aftertaste, and sort of get this more smooth mouthfeel type of perception, right? And no sugar added. It was beautiful.
Yeah, and I went over and talked with an Israeli-based company, Better Juice, that's just getting ready to start really ramping up their production. And they have this sugar reduction technology with enzymes, as well as juice processors to help get that sugar out of your fruit concentrates, your purees. And they showed me they had, a little Pyrex measuring glass showing how much sugar is in 1 cup of orange juice. And wouldn't it be great if we could naturally make those into something that's a little bit better for you and maybe something that's a little easier on the body? So I think there are several routes we can go with this reduction, but it's so clear that that's what consumers are looking for.
And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention also that sodium reduction is sort of the twin to sugar reduction. There was a great segue into that with A and B ingredients. So they were showcasing, of course, their Foslife prebiotic soluble fiber syrups for sugar reduction. So you could get, fewer calories, but sweeter treats, that sort of thing. But they were also showcasing this, their 2 C's sea salt. Say that 3 times real fast. But it was a clean label solution for sodium reduction. And they were all natural sea salt blends. And they contained considerably less sodium than traditional salt, but they still give you that nice salty taste that you want to have. And the other company that I talked to was at Edlong, and they were talking about their, imparting sweetness with their sugar technology. But they also noted that sodium reduction was one of the most highly requested functional solutions that their customers were asking for. And so they also have this, their way is to use cheese flavors to, in like this powder form to boost that salty flavor without having to increase the actual sodium content in the product.
Well, you've segued perfectly into my last question, and I ask it every year. Did you have a favorite sample from our 3 days on the show floor?
Wow. Did I have a favorite sample? Yeah, I spent some time in the ingredient booth. Actually a wonderful time in the ingredient booth. And they had this bar. Well, first of all, they had two things that I really like, so I'm going to say both. One was this lemongrass bay leaf chamomile soda. And it, again, this was a sugar reduction or sugar reduced beverage. And they were using their stevia based solution for that. And it was absolutely delightful. In fact, I said, please tell me somebody's picking up on this recipe and is going to put it in a can, right? And the second one was this cold pressed protein bar, and they use their Vitessence P100 HD, which is made from non-allergen plant-based protein isolates. It solves this problem of shelf life, right? But you maintain that nice, moist chewiness of the bar for longer. And so it was actually, sometimes you get a protein bar and it's kind of a little gritty, after a certain date. This was really smooth. And so I really liked these two items in particular. Those were my best samples from the show.
So I think my favorite, and this was something I had day one, and it just has always stuck with me. I stopped by Bungie, which specializes in proteins, lipids, a lot of dairy flavors over there. And they had a French silk pie cookie. Now, first of all, you tell me there's pie, I'm there. Note to future exhibitors, put pie out, I will stop by your booth. But it was, the silk pie filling was incredibly smooth. And then the cookie had that perfect pie crust, like crumble. I don't know how they did it, but it clearly has stuck with me until now. And, couldn't even tell that there wasn't, actual butter in it. It was a butter flavor.
Oh man, that sounds delicious.
Julie, thanks so much for chatting with me, and I can't wait to do it again next year.
I know. I'll see you on the floor next year.
If you'd like to learn more about the 5 trends Emily and Julie saw at this year's event, you can read their full recap in the September issue of Food Technology. You could say that Daniel Kurzrock's interest in upcycled foods extends back to his days as an undergrad at UCLA. That's when he discovered that the spent grains from his home brewing hobby could be used to make bread, which he could then sell to cover the costs of brewing more beer. Before long, the budding entrepreneur realized the impact that ingredient upcycling could play in reducing food waste. He went on to found ingredient supplier Upcycled Foods and become an influential player in the growing movement to transform food waste into business opportunity. Food Technology's Mary Ellen Kuhn recently caught up with Kurzrock to discuss his passion for curbing food waste and the growing market for upcycled foods.
So tell us a little bit about your story. How did you become so passionate about the whole topic of upcycling?
Like many good stories, it started with a hobby for underage homebrewing, actually. So I way back when 2008, 2009, I learned how to make beer as an undergrad at UCLA. And in that process, I did love that as a 19-year-old, I could make a beverage that I couldn't purchase in the store. But I was blown away with how much grain I was using to make every batch. It's about a pound of grain for every 6-pack of beer. I knew from the beer making process we were just extracting the sugars from the grains. That must mean that there's some good stuff left behind: fiber, protein, flavor. Started making bread to sell to friends. Would use the profits from the bread sales to buy more ingredients to make more beer. And along the way, just started asking bigger and bigger questions, namely, what's happening commercially? What's happening commercially with breweries where there's now, at the time, there was more than 2 new breweries opening per day. There's, fast forward a few years, there's over 9,000 breweries operating in the US. And on the other side of the industry, you see, seeing a lot of food companies starting to talk about sustainability and about nutrition. And it really felt like there was an opportunity to connect the dots between what seemed like a missed opportunity, with breweries to close the loop on these valuable nutrients, and food companies who were looking for ingredients that deliver on flavor and nutrition and sustainability. And so one step after another, but that was kind of the early days, was this one hobby that opened my eyes to an opportunity that I'm still pursuing today. Fortunately, with some wonderful professionals around me that are advancing it in a way that I could have never imagined possible as a underage home brewer back at UCLA.
Well, clearly you had an entrepreneurial bent from an early age, so props to you. But I guess one of the things I was hoping we could talk about today that I'm curious about is why now? It seems kind of like there's an uptick or an upturn in upcycling, and I wondered if you could shed some light on that.
So things just take time, and in food, we're dealing with the physical economy. We are dealing with supply chains and production and distribution. And that's on top of all the other basics of, taking awareness and trying to translate it into action. So there was a lot of legwork that went into how it feels today over many years. I mean, even if you go back, fast forwarding a little bit from my story to just more broadly, the landmark NRDC report Wasted that came out, I believe the first edition was 2013, it may have been 2014, that quantified for the first time how much food we're wasting globally, and estimated about 40% of all the food that we're producing is going uneaten. But there's been a lot of work to raise awareness about food waste as an issue, one of the most pressing issues of our time, one of the most impactful levers in drawing down the climate crisis. We're wasting money, we're wasting resources, we're wasting opportunities to feed people. And now, today, we're in a place where there's more awareness than there's ever been before in the business-to-business community.
Well, it's interesting to hear you talk about food waste, which is obviously an enormous issue. But kind of beyond that, how did it work in terms of identifying ingredients that were being wasted, but that actually had value to formulations?
In particular, we're very interested in agricultural surplus and then processing and manufacturing byproducts, where there's an opportunity to create co-products. There's a whole other field of innovation in this space around looking at more traditional surplus, things that are maybe cosmetically imperfect, the wrong size, things like that. And not all are equal, and what we found is important is to match the need state on the end use. So is there a certain functionality that a food scientist is looking to solve for, and how can upcycling be used to tap into that? And in our case, with our business model, we're not a commodities ingredient company. So we are really focused on that solution, right? So what is the job that is trying to get done by the innovation team at our customers, and how can an upcycled supply chain help enable that? So that can be keto friendly with low net carb, high fiber attributes of the Super Grain Plus ingredient, for example, or it could be the plant protein play, or it could be developing feedstocks, for example, to go into precision fermentation end uses to create other types of alternative protein.
Tell us a little bit more about some of the nutritional benefits that can be found in byproducts that might otherwise be wasted, and how you go about identifying those.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know how detailed you want to get, Mary Ellen, in this, but at a high level, it starts with just fundamentally understanding from that primary production process, what is being effectively removed from this. So in the case of the barley malt for making beer, it's the fermentable sugars that are, oversimplifying, but they're basically removed, about 90% of them from the grain. And so what's left, that leaves up to, in just a crude state, up to about almost 30% protein, more than 40% dietary fiber. And through different types of value-added processing, that can be commercialized as an ingredient that can fortify finished goods. So like our core product, the Regrain Supergrain Plus, is a powder that can be incorporated in a bread at around like 20% of the flour weight, for example, and result in great tasting breads with a great story that have a fiber claim, attached to them, a lower net carb claim that's possible. And so depending on what we're looking at, there's different health attributes that need to be analyzed on a case-by-case basis. So another supply chain that we've gotten very interested in, for example, is coffee for a lot of reasons. And, in the coffee harvest process, there's what we end up with is a bean, green bean at the source, then gets roasted and turned into coffee that most of us drink every morning. But on the farm, there's also a fruit that's created from that. That's, the coffee cherry, also called cascara. And, some people are aware of that, and even fewer are aware of the coffee leaf itself. And coffee leaves are a wonderful source of antioxidants. They have caffeine, they've got great flavor, it's got a natural sweetness to it. And so that's, there's value in these co-products that are perhaps there's a science paper or two that, that are citing them, but in a lot of cases, there's not enough commercialization, going on. And so that's something that where we can come in and we have a pretty good pulse on what the food developers are looking for and are trying to selectively commercialize a portfolio of complementary ingredients that can help enable that.
Well, you said something in the food technology article that resonated with me, and I wanted to ask you about. You said, I think it's an inevitability of the food system that upcycled ingredients will be moving forward. So what makes you confident in that?
Because you could care about nothing besides profit and think this is a good idea. There is value that is being, like financial value being left off the table where upcycling is overlooked. Because these are, if you have the opportunity, talk to any business operator who's currently selling one product and present them with an opportunity to sell 3 products instead from the same amount of inputs, who wouldn't say yes to that? And so that is maybe the base, example of what gives me confidence that this is an inevitability. But it's also just like a kind of human value standpoint. It's also pretty difficult to argue with the idea that we should be doing as much as possible with the resources, that we have, and that it doesn't make sense to live in a world in which, up to 40% of food that's grown is wasted, while, in the US, it's something like 1 in 7 are food insecure, right? Food waste does not cause hunger, but the fact that those two, it's a cognitive dissonance, right? So I think there's a lot of ways to meet people where they are with this issue and get them to care about it for their own reasons. And that can just be profit. That can be environmental reasons. That can be nutritional reasons. And when you have something like that at such a fundamental level can make sense to many different people authentically, I think we've got a really good shot at pulling this off.
Dan, thanks so much. You've tied a lot of things together on the topic of upcycling.
Daniel Kurzrock is the founder and CEO of Upcycled Foods. Read the September issue of Food Technology magazine to learn more about how he and others are turning food waste into value-added ingredients.
Thank you to this episode's sponsor, Kalsec. Visit kalsec.com. That's KALSEC.com to connect with the Kalsec team and find your path to natural products your customers will love and trust.
And that wraps up this episode of Omnivore. Thanks again to all our guests and my colleagues at Food Technology. Omnivore is produced and distributed by the Institute of Food Technologists. If you enjoyed today's show and want to learn more about Food Technology magazine or how to join the conversation by becoming an IFT member, visit ift.org/membership. For more in-depth discussion about innovation in the science of food, check out IFT's other podcast, Side Dish, on the News and Publications page of ift.org. If you have comments or suggestions for future shows, just send us an email. The address is editors@ift.org. For the entire team at Food Technology and IFT, I'm Bill McDowell. Thanks for listening, And join us again for our next episode.